Love, be encouraged, love. I'm lost to you, love. Be the first to love. Feel your heartbeat, love. Sing more about it, love. I never got it, love. It's eternal love. For the magical love is a shelter. Now and always love. Before and after love. Love, my voice is love. Love, come on. Love, don't be shy. Love, our voices together. Love, yeah. Love, love is our shelter. Now and always. Love before and after
All right, so we are rounding out, the theme of this month is love, as you might have guessed. Next month it is creating community. But today we continue this exploration of love, and our guest speaker today, SigTaylor, is going to be speaking to us on relational mindfulness, the path to open-hearted relationships. So whether it's a coupleship that you're in, or you're in any of your intimate relationships with your children, your siblings, your parents, how can, I'm going to find out where I wrote, I've got several pieces of paper here, I'm going to find the right one. So Zig is a relationship counselor, a marriage counselor. He, oh, I got another piece of paper. I gotta look on this side. All right. Wow, paper. Aren't we living in a paperless society? I don't know about that. So he is a Calgary marriage and family therapist. And this presentation represents the culmination of decades of his experience and training in couples therapy. He's a clinical member of the American Association for Marriage and Family Therapy and a clinical fellow of the Canadian Association for Marriage and Family Therapy. He also teaches couple therapy at the University of Calgary. So you can see he's got a wealth of professional experience, and I do know from speaking here before, he brings the depth of his personality, the lived experience of being a human being. And today he's going to be helping us to explore the core of why we struggle and have conflict and stress in our intimate relationships, and give us some pointers on how we can get out of that pattern and into a pattern that pleases our heart. So please help me welcome SigTaylor.
Caught up in that music, and I forgot for a while that I have to give a talk. How many people in here are in a relationship?
Well,
How many people are trying to get into a relationship? How many people are trying to get out of a relationship? It's funny, a lot of people are trying to get in and get out. I just want to tell you a little bit about myself. It's so true. Marriage therapy, I use my own life and my own relationship a lot when I talk to my clients. So my wife and I have been together for 13 years. And I think I've had every relationship issue that you can have almost over the 13 years. So when I talk to my clients, I want to make it clear that we're all in the same boat. In fact, counselors will probably have more problems than their clients do. But why else would you want to be a marriage counselor? Right? Can you imagine a little boy, and you ask him what he wants to do with his life? What do you want to be? You expect him to say a policeman, a fireman, a pilot? What if he said, I want to be a marriage counselor? You take him to counseling, right? You see, it really is about love, you know? It really is about that. You know, I just, And you can walk in this room, and I feel it when I walk in here. And there's the old saying, it's either love, you're either in love or fear. We've all heard that, I'm sure. It's true. It really is true. There's a reason that we don't feel love. It's because we're not used to speaking our truth. You know, when I say speaking our truth, how you really feel on the inside. Because most of us grow up in families where that's not okay to do that. I got to tell you a little bit about my relationship training as a child. My dad was an ex-RCMP officer. All my brothers are in the military. Maybe I told you the story before, but I got the message from my father, I'll give you something to be sad about, right? So I learned in my family that it was not safe to have vulnerable feelings. So I had to learn to be tough, and I had to put a shell around me. And you see, men have a particular problem with that. 70% of divorces are initiated by women. Did you know that? 70%. 95% of the calls to my office are from women. 95% of the self-help books that people buy are bought by women. See, how do boys learn how to be boys? By not being girls. Because what do the girls do? They cry, they laugh, they hug, they're generally quite cooperative, they're playing together. Little boys right away learn that's not the right thing to be a little boy. So little boys are out there doing what they're, basically taught to do, which is be tough, rough and tumble. So boys learn right away, most of us. It's changing, thank heavens, that it's not okay to have feelings, vulnerable feelings. So in other words, what I'm really trying to say here is, most men are unable to deliver the level of emotional intimacy that today's women demand. Any women in here resonate with that? So, what we're talking about today is relational mindfulness. And what that really means is being able to get in touch with how you really feel on the inside. And a lot of men have a lot of trouble with that. So I actually have a feelings list for men in my office. And you ask a lot of men, how do they feel? What do you think they say? Fine. Men often have an emotional repertoire of two things. Either they're fine or pissed off, one of the two. So, what I want to talk about today, as I said, is what I call the whoosh. For years and years and years, I've tried to figure out what it is that happens, why we withdraw from each other, why we have conflict, why we get into arguments, why we get angry. It all starts with I call it the whoosh. Starts lower in the body, and it works its way up. And the next thing you know, if you're not present and if you're not mindful, you're in a full-blown emotional reaction. It starts with that trigger. Does everybody know what I'm talking about?
Yes.
Anybody here that doesn't whoosh? We all whoosh. We do. And it's that whoosh that drives us either into conflict or has us withdraw from it. So Relational Mindfulness 101 is, first of all, recognizing that whoosh. The more mindful, the more aware you are, the more connected to your body you are, the sooner you recognize those sensations that are coming up in your body, the more you can manage, the more easily you can manage them. Because if you don't interrupt those initial sensations, they will become full-blown emotional reactions. You're having a nice day, you know, it's a sunny day, you're driving home from Unity Church with your partner, and all of a sudden somebody says the wrong thing. Right? Next thing you know, whoosh, right? And then you could be having an argument, and what happens to your nice day? Okay. See, I'm pretty sure that most of you right now are in a pretty reasonable, logical, kind, functional way of being right now. When we're functional, we can think straight, we can problem solve, we can be creative, right? No problem. Until what?
Whoosh.
Trigger. Until the whoosh. That's right. All of a sudden, we go from being functional adults to being somewhere between 15 and 2 years of age. It's true. All of us. Yeah. This is the Achilles heel of relationships. This is why marriage counseling doesn't work a lot of the time. You can talk to a counselor in his office or her office because the counselor brings emotional safety, right? So you can be functional. Then you leave the office, everything's fine and dandy, and then next thing you know, the whoosh, and so much for counseling. So unless we get a handle on this, I don't care how much you meditate. Of course, meditation does help, no question about that. I'll maybe talk a little bit about that, mindfulness meditation. But really, I've done everything, I used to say, everything except float myself in a dark tank to not whoosh. I've gone to 10-day retreats and seminars and trainings and books and I still whoosh. I walked in here, I whooshed. I meditated this morning. So it's not that we're not going to whoosh, it's what do we do about it? How do we manage that? When I see clients today, these days, the evolution, if you will, of my practice, what I want to know is, who are you at your worst with your partner? When you are triggered, who are you? What do you do? What do you act like when you're in that whoosh? So I want you to take a minute just to pause and think about the last conflict you had, the last argument, and reflect on what part of you showed up. I call that your stance, our stance. It's what we do when we're under stress and when we're triggered. I'll tell you what mine is. When I get triggered, which doesn't happen as much anymore, but it still happens. It happened when I came home from work on Saturday. You might find it hard to believe that working with conflicted couples all day can be stressful. Especially when you're trying to be loving and vulnerable and open, and they're not. It's a tough road to hoe sometimes. What happens for me is, I do what my dad did. I become grandiose, one up. I get into this kind of arrogant, scolding, kind of lecturing teacher mode. My wife loves it, makes her want to have sex with me right now. Have a drink of water. Right? And then she gets triggered into this sort of rebellious teenager, 14, 15 years old, nobody's going to tell me what to do, and then there you go. You know, I'm a 12-year-old trying to dominate everything, and she's fucking, you know, that's what happens. Blood pressure's up, hearing shuts down, blood leaves the neocortex here, can't see, can't think, and you're supposed to solve problems in that place, right? So, what do you do when you're triggered? Now that's my MO. That's the very thing, the heart of what has to change in couples counseling. That piece right there. Because that's my stance. My wife, her stance is this really rebellious teenager, and if we don't interrupt that pattern, counseling doesn't work. Your relationship will really never ever change until you get that figured out. So what do we do about this whoosh? Well, there's a simple practice that I teach all my clients how to deal with this. You first of all have to be aware that this happens to everybody, and be aware when you feel this whoosh. As soon as you do that, as soon as you feel the whoosh, you stop. It's like an alarm bell. Ding, 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 ding. Zip it. Do not say anything. I mean it. Say nothing. Just know that you're now whooshing, and anything you say is probably not going to be helpful. Because we literally get taken over by another part of us, another side of us. Okay? Got that? Stop. Second thing you do is breathe. Take a deep breath, and then take a few more. And what does that do? Brings oxygen into your system. It helps you calm down. It enables you to stay present and still have access to your frontal lobes, the neocortex, where you can still have some level of rational, reasonable, logical thought. That breath. And the next thing you do is think. Think. At my worst, when I come home and I'm really stressed, and my wife, maybe she's had a bad day, she really wanted to be here today, but she's not, so I don't have to edit anything I say. I said, sweetie, is it okay if I talk about this? Yeah, I guess. Many of you have met her or seen her, Nikki. Sometimes, at my worst, if I'm have had a really stressful day, and she's maybe had a bad day, and I walk in the door, I notice everything. The garbage is scattered around. You know, why is that not picked up? Right? Here I am working my tail off, you know, what are you doing today? You know, this kind of thing, right? When you're stressed and edgy. So when I feel a whoosh, my job is to get from the front door, through the living room, into the kitchen, sometimes I say into the backyard next to the barbecue. Right? It's to get it from the front door into the kitchen without saying anything. And if I can do that, that's a good day. Because that gives me the time to actually breathe and think. I'm stressed, I feel the whoosh. My wife's maybe had a bad day, maybe there's more going on with her that I'm aware of. And I can avoid a conflict or an argument. That's what it takes. Whoosh. What's the next one? Stop. Next.
Breathe.
Think. If you take nothing else from this seminar today, take that. Because I teach that to couples every day, day in, day out, and I say to them, you'll always need to do this. Always. See, what I talk about with my clients these days, and myself, the training that I have, that I've been training in the last couple of years, is called Relational Life Therapy. I don't know if you've ever heard of it or not. It's a training developed by a guy named Terrence Real, and one of the big parts of the training is the humanity of the counselor. That we're all in the same boat. We all have our mountain to climb. I have the same issues that you have, maybe a little different, but we're all working on it. And what we're working on is relational practice. Here's the relational practice. Here's the thing that I try to get across to my clients and myself. It's like learning to play the piano. When you start to play the piano, how does it go? Not very good. Because you see, nobody had these kind of conversations 50 years ago or 30 years ago, or very few people did. Growing up in my day, when I was a kid, you know the criteria for a good relationship back then? If he doesn't beat you, and he's not a drunk, you made your bed, you lied in it. You know, for the most part. I can remember talking to my mom, and she would say to me, that's just how men are. You ever hear that before? That's just how men are? But see, relationships like that are no longer viable anymore. Women are now equal. We need to have egalitarian, equal partner conversations and connections. So what I get my clients into this mindset is you have to think of your relationship as a practice. Just like a meditation practice, any other kind of practice. And when you start off, it's not easy. Because when we first meet somebody and fall in love, don't things go usually pretty well? Do you know why that is? My theory about that? Well, when you meet somebody, as we all know, all kinds of chemicals and hormones are released, oxytocin, vasopressin, dopamine. It's a love elixir. And what it really does is, it's a temporary collapse of ego boundaries. You're way more open, you're way more receptive, you're way more understanding, you have more compassion, you're more interested in your partner. That all happens in the early stages of a relationship. The cynical side of me says that's just nature's way of tricking us into getting married. Because that doesn't last, does it? Once the hormones wear off, then the real work of the relationship begins. And that's where today's relationships demand a new level of relational intelligence, a new level of relational mindfulness that never used to, really was never part of a relationship. So, I was just listening to an Eckhart Tolle talk last night, and he said, I can't teach you anything. I can't give anything to you. I can't add anything to you. I thought it was interesting for my talk. I'm trying to calm down, and get this organized. Then I hear, listen to that. But it's true. See, what we all need to do is we need to have an experience for ourselves. When we talk about a larger presence, when we talk about, the consciousness, if you don't experience that, it's just more information, isn't it?
Yeah.
So what I feel compelled to do is, I've done this before in these talks, I want to give you an experience, but it's going to be a bit edgy. And I always think that people who come to Unity are edgy kind of folks. Is that you wouldn't know. It's just, pick me. When I first started to come here to give talks, and I'd walk in, and people would smile at me and go to hug me. I went, and why is that? Because it's vulnerable. Yeah. Let alone, like, I walked in and I got not just 3 hugs, I got 3 real hugs. You know, somebody actually hugs you and they're really present versus the flipper. So what I'm going to have you do, I think I'm not at my 5-minute point yet. Am I at my 5-minute
Yeah,
point?
that's what that was.
Oh, I thought you said hi. Pick me. Okay. All right. So this is what I do with all my clients, every one of them, usually in the first session. We rarely have today in relationships what I call nose-to-nose conversations. What I mean by that is where we actually look at each other. You think about it. When was the last time you looked at your partner? Really looked at them? And not only just look at them, but remember who they are. And breathe. When was the last time we did that? You did that. Well, you're the exception. Of course, this is an exceptional group. Okay? I can't just generalize like I would to a normal kind of audience, regular audience. But what I'm going to have you do is, you don't need to bring this up right now. I have this card in the back of my pocket here. Now you don't need to get it out right now. This card, there's a blue side and an orange side. This card is a whole relationship program on one card. If you do what's on this card, I promise you will have a better relationship. I mean it. I promise. I'm having a talk, a fireside chat, as we call it. There's no fire, but it's a chat.
You're the fire.
I'm the fire, okay. And we're going to go over this card and answer any of your questions about relationships for about a half an hour after this talk. But for now, I'm going to have you turn to a partner, turn to someone next to you. Just wait a second, don't turn yet. I want to give you some instructions. I want you to have a gentle turn, and I want you to make some gentle eye contact. Gentle. That doesn't mean a stare down at the OK Corral. It doesn't mean a 5-minute satsang kind of gaze. Just look over there, whether it's your partner or not, and as you look, breathe into your body. Take a breath. Take 2 or 3. And just remember who it is that you're looking at. If it's your partner, remember that. Remember it's a human being, and just look and be present with them. And as you do, breathe into your body. Got that instruction? Mm-hmm. You want me to do that? Okay, just go ahead and do that. So gentle eye contact. Breathe into your body. No talking right now. And just pay attention to what you feel in your body. Breathe. And see if you can feel the whoosh. The whoosh. You can look away. Now close your eyes. Just reflect on what happened, what that was like. make eye contact with another human being and be aware of what you feel in your body. Now you can unturn back to your normal seat position. And that experience will tell you, you see, that your body, our bodies, will never lie to us if we're reasonably in touch with them. Like Eckhart Tolle was saying, he said this last night too. If you have a thought and your feelings don't line up with your thoughts, trust your feelings, because your body will tell you what's really going on. Okay? So that's an exercise that we all do, we all need to do in our daily check-in, which is on the back of this card. When couples take 5 or 10 minutes each day to check in with each other, which is all laid out here, you start off with that. Making friends with each other. So I think I'm about ready to wrap up. Is that 5 minutes? Okay, good. So I want us to review this. All together, I want us to say whoosh.
Whoosh.
And then stop, breathe, think. Okay, we'll wrap it up there.